Here's Rick Rubin and Buffy Sainte-Marie.
I want to start by talking about what the world was like when you started making music. What was the original motivation? What made you start doing this? What was the culture like?
I had no choice. I was living in an adoptive family in Maine and Massachusetts.
You were born in Canada, yes?
Maybe. I think I was, but I was adopted, so you don't really know.
You don't think of yourself as Canadian?
I think of myself as Indigenous North American, and Indigenous people in North America, we predate those borders. Those borders haven't been around very long.
Understood.
And although most Americans would not know, probably a lot of Canadians would know about the Jay Treaty, for instance, which means that, we can just go back and forth that we don't need no passport. But most of the guys at the border don't know that. So as an Indigenous person in the Americas, you not only have the world be the way that it is, which is tough for everybody, but also you get another little set of challenges in that most of the other people don't know about you yourself. You're such a small minority. I mean, there are so few people of Native American background in show business. I mean, there's, like Burt Reynolds was, I'm 1/8 Cherokee, and my, some other celebrities, my grandmother was a Cherokee princess, blah, blah. But when it comes to real Native American people who have no choice, and just there's no alternative to being an Indian, however you call us. And by the way, we all say Indian, Native American, Indigenous. We can't, most of us use it interchangeably.
How old were you when you were adopted?
A baby. They don't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, adoptive children have a lot of problems that most people have never thought about. You don't get a horoscope. You don't know when you were born. You don't know where you were born. You have a birthday assigned by the court. So you never really know who you are.
Yeah.
In the cases of most marginalized, kids come from a marginalized community. You don't really know. So I was about 3 and my family got a piano, an upright piano. So that became like my toy. That's what I did instead of sports and Barbie dolls and things.
And what was the music going on at that time? Like, what were you hearing?
Well, anything that my parents would have on the radio or records that they had around. So somewhere along the line, I discovered Tchaikovsky. And I loved that. I used to listen to Swan Lake and Nutcracker Suite and this thing called In a Persian Market and whatever would come on the radio. And I just taught myself how to play, and just because it was so much fun. And I never could learn how to read music. So it's taken me all these years, and just a few years ago, I found out I'm actually dyslexic in music, which I had never heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people who come at music not through the path of music teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the first time you ever played in front of people?
In the summertime, I used to go over to a state park, and I used to sit around a campfire with everybody else and play songs that I'd written, and Everly Brothers hits, and Fats Domino. This was in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked about what kind of music influenced me. That's what it was. I heard classics as a child, or whatever happened to be on the radio, which was kind of Frank Sinatra era.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I really fell in love with music was when I must have been 11 or 12 or 13. And I used to go down in the basement, and I was supposed to be ironing my school clothes, but I discovered rockabilly music on the radio. So Carl Perkins, Scotty Moore, they were just my heroes. And I was also lucky enough, I was living in Maine and Massachusetts, and I used to get on a train and go to New York. I had a friend that I had met in Maine at a state park, and he invited me to his house, and all our mothers in agreement. It was those days, and we used to go to the Alan Freed rock and roll shows. And then the Alan Freed Rock and Roll Show started coming to Boston as well. So I went there. So I used to see people like Joanne Campbell. Nobody's ever heard of Joanne Campbell. Oh, shame on you. Oh, man, she was hot. I mean, she and the Platters, I think, were the only women, the Platters, there was one woman. Oh, and Laverne Baker. They were the only women. But It was Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, the Everly Brothers,
And those,
Frankie Lyman.
they just play a handful of songs, yes?
You got it. Yeah. They play maybe 2 or 3 songs. And then next, oh my God, it was great. It was just such a thrill. I knew that that's where I wanted to be. In the audience, on the stage, backstage, I didn't care. I just wanted to be around the music.
Would you say at that time were all kids into it, or was it?
No.
So what?
They
Again,
weren't.
more like
No.
what was the world? What was the world like then? Like, so would you say you were unusual for being in that group of people?
I wasn't in a group of people, which was pretty standard for me because, like I said, I lived in 2 different places. I lived in Maine and Massachusetts. So I didn't really have tight social groups.
Mm-hmm.
I had trouble at home. There were pedophiles in the neighborhood and in the house. So I was kind of a loner kid. And so the music that I was hearing, I was with Fats Domino more than I was with the other kids. And in high school, now I'm maybe 15, 16, yeah. And I'm hearing these doo-wop and rockabilly, Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley.
But it wasn't. But just so we understand,
Yeah.
it wasn't all the kids listening to this music.
No, it wasn't. And
It
as a
was
matter of
like subculture music.
It was subculture music, but it was described. The grown-ups would have thought, oh, it's just cheap. That's they would have associated with black people in very ugly terms, or poor people, not us anyway. It was something that was a little risque.
It's just so interesting because looking back, we think of both the music of the 50s and the 60s as so ubiquitous and so
No, it
mainstream.
No, it was not.
So it was the underground music of the day. And
And good girls didn't listen to that kind of music.
interesting.
Yeah, bad boys did. So I went through different social things. I think I went through social demotion because of the music that I liked, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because that's what I wanted to do anyway, was go home and listen to my records. And,
Yeah, and you just
45s.
felt it. You felt it in your heart. It was not a. It made sense to you. It didn't have to make sense to everyone else. Do you think the other people didn't feel it?
Well, thinking of my own situation, the handful of kids I hung out with, I think they thought it was sinful.
Wow.
They wouldn't have used that word, and they weren't really churchy, but they were definitely,
It was just like looked at beneath them. They would think it was beneath them.
they would think that it was.
Would they be ashamed to listen to it, do you think?
I think they hadn't discovered it.
Tell me your first experience of folk music.
Oh, gosh, let's see. I guess I was in college. I went to the University of Massachusetts, and I got a degree in teaching and a degree in Oriental philosophy. By the way, you started out in philosophy, I heard.
Yeah.
See, I've always considered myself very fortunate in that I came along into show business kind of by accident. I didn't really, I just, it's surprising that I was there at all. But I was called a folk singer because that's what they were trying to sell. So I came to Greenwich Village straight from college, but here I was in New York City for the first time, and I was a songwriter. But you weren't supposed to be one yet, and the folk police could get after you.
Was it acknowledged at that time that folk music was really an old form being brought back? So everyone knew that this is old music.
I think so.
We think of the 60s as when folk music started.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting that it actually, even then it was old music.
Yeah.
It was just a new wave of this old music.
It was interest in these old forms of music. And like I said, I felt as though I was very fortunate to come along when I did. In the first place, the window to show business was just left open by accident, I think. We were coming out of the Eisenhower generation. Mm-hmm. And it was like Frank Sinatra and, that kind of
like more
Tin Pan
loungy.
Alley. Loungy, big bands were still around. Mm-hmm. But I was very lucky because I didn't know anything about folk music. I was just getting over my degree in Oriental philosophy. And I stepped on stage and I sang these songs. Now, I was lucky enough to be around real folk singers like Pete Seeger, Ewan McCall, Joan Baez, who sang songs that were 400 or 500 years old. Mm-hmm. They were real folk songs. And
Mhm.
see, that really thrills me. As a person who doesn't read music, and I don't come from any kind of formal music background, including the Paul Simon kind of music background where you grow up in New York, your uncle's in the business, your other uncle's a lawyer and somebody else, you know what I mean? I don't come from that. And marginalized people, I think it'd be very surprising to most of you guys who are really solid in the record business and have not really experienced what it's like to be really marginalized and not know anybody, not have a Rolodex, not have an address book, not know how it's done, who does it.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even know where the door is. There's no way for Native American people to get into show business. There just isn't.
Mhm.
And it's very rare anyway, I think, for anybody in show business to hold the door open for anyone else. It's just like, I'm here. How do you like me now, you know? But I didn't feel like that. I mean, I carried Joni Mitchell's tape around in my purse for a long time, months and months. And I played it for all kinds of people in the music business.
How did you first run into Joni?
Well, she was a fan of mine. And I don't know where it was. It could have been in Saskatchewan or Minneapolis or somewhere. We were both on the road. And I heard about her and I heard her music. And I just thought she was just great. I thought, oh, she's great. She's beautiful. She's smart. She wants to do this. Nobody wanted to hear it. So finally, I played her stuff for Elliot Roberts and told him to go down to the, where was it? I don't know, the Black Cat Cafe or something, one of those little clubs in the village. And they made a great career together. But it was very, very hard. People who really are connoisseurs of folk music would realize that folk music comes from everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just music made by folks. It's not just music made by the chosen few who are making the music business some money. We're going to invest in this. We're going to keep the public thinking that it's very folky, but really we're pumping dollars out of it. I mean, so many people made money on Woody Guthrie and, well, even Bob Marley later, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are in the music business. We know where it's at.
Yeah. There's always been people who are in the business to make money, and there've always been people in the business to make great art. It just, there's both paths.
Yes, there are. And I think most non-musicians, just most listeners, wouldn't realize that. And I think that most new artists don't know that. And I think the record business has been terribly complicit in try to keep them ignorant.
Yeah, and it's a business of sharks.
Yes, it is. I mean, I was so green. I had never met a lawyer. I had never had a conversation with a businessman ever. I remember when I first went to New York, I was running around in my little high heels and mini dresses and things. And I remember I went into the musicians union for the first time, which is kind of like walking into the lobby of the Sopranos. I mean, I grew up around Italian American, semi-mafia people, in Maine and Massachusetts. I did that. And I look upon it very kindly, like people in The Sopranos would, because I was seeing the family side of that. But the business side of that, wherever it's coming from, whether it's people whose roots are in this part of Europe or some other part of Europe, show business was developed in Europe through vaudeville by people who were not only concerned with the show, they were also concerned with sustaining the business. I mean, that's not necessarily greed and I'm going to rip off artists. But of course, the part that we object to is exactly about that. And there have been artists ripped off forever and ever. So I had never met a lawyer or a businessman. I remember when I first went into Vanguard Records and they asked me who my lawyer was. And I said I didn't have one. And they said, that's okay, you can use ours. So I signed a 7-year deal.
How did you know to go to Vanguard? How did it happen?
No, I was just stupid. No, Blue Note also wanted to sign me. So Vanguard was very big at the time.
Was Joan Baez already on Vanguard?
Yes, she was. Yeah, Joan Baez was already on Vanguard and having a fantastic career.
Yeah.
So she was already signed. Her first album, I guess, was out just about the time that I showed up, and they wanted to sign me, and I said, yeah. Depending upon how you look at it, I kind of either fell into or lucked into having a career. My first album, all of a sudden, I was Billboard's Best New Artist. What? just singing these songs that I'd been writing all this time, and they were about everything. And I didn't think it was going to do anything because people were pretty suspect of songwriters anyway. And my first album is called It's My Way. I think they just put it into outer space or something, or it's into the Library of Congress. I don't know. It just got some big honor. I thought it was awful, but everybody else loved it. No, I thought it was awful.
That it was included, or you thought it was awful that the albums?
Oh, no. I thought the album itself was awful. Oh, no. The songs are wonderful, but I just think they took the wrong takes.
Oh,
And of course, an artist had no say in those days. Like, when did you get into the music business? Just to put me in the dates. So on.
Mid-'80s.
Okay.
Mid-'80s.
All right. Okay, I get it.
It was the early days of hip hop music. That's where I started.
So nice. Yeah. So it was a scene where, at first, it was very naive, and it was like, yes, students are in the streets. We have discovered our brains. We're not going to your freaking war. And there was a lot of protest bubbling under. I had written Universal Soldier, although everybody thought Donovan wrote it. And I still have people come up to me today and argue that Donovan wrote Universal Soldier and Codine. And see, Donovan was a person of conscience who wrote all of his own songs except for 2 songs. And those 2 songs were Universal Soldier and Codine. So he got credit for writing those as well. And I don't think he ever took credit for it, but his management never pointed out that he hadn't written them.
How and why did you write Codine?
Codine, for years, until very recently, people wouldn't understand this, but now people would. I was addicted to codeine by a doctor in Florida. I had been playing at Freddie Neal's place in Coconut Grove, that little club that he used to have. I don't know. I went to a doctor who said that I had bronchitis. I'd been coughing and things. I think I was probably just exhausted from being on the road all the time. I practically lived in a bus. And he addicted me to codeine. And he apparently had addicted many young ladies to codeine and turned them out. And so people who are addicted through their doctors to an opiate, and codeine, see, it's an opiate. I mean, codeine, it sounds, silly, trick or treat, kid stuff. Codeine is as much of an opiate as heroin is. It's an opiate. And just like all the doctor drugs, the synthetic drugs now, like Percocet and all of the OxyContin, all of them. They're all synthetic opiates.
Mm-hmm.
It's my belief, now you might disagree, but it's my belief that if a person gets into drugs through social reasons, they're very likely to get addicted in kind of a different, almost more difficult way. They're in it and it's fun and it's wonderful and they're having fun with their friends. But if a doctor addicts you and all of a sudden you have to leave town, as what happened to me, I had to leave Florida. And we were driving through Georgia, and I was just feeling horrible, no idea what was wrong with me, and went to a pharmacist to refill a Florida prescription. I didn't know you couldn't do that. And the guy said, I can't fill it. It's from a different state, but how long have you been taking it? And the pharmacist pointed out to me that I was addicted to an opiate. I had no idea.
Wow.
I had just been going to the doctor for my shots and for my pills.
Yeah.
So I went through withdrawal cold turkey, but no, it wasn't like I ever had any fun on it. See?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a
really
bummer.
interesting. I would have guessed, had I not known the story, that there was a long blues tradition of songs about drugs.
Cocaine blues, cocaine, going
like
up State Street.
like
back
those
down
kind of
Main.
things. Yes.
Yeah.
And I would think, you're doing one of those kind of songs.
No.
I would have never guessed it was a personal issue.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, because, I didn't really have that personal issue.
How old were you at the time?
Maybe 22.
Yeah, amazing.
And see, I don't drink. I still don't drink. I just zero alcohol all my life just because I never did.
Yeah.
And I was a girl by myself, and I looked a certain way, right? I mean, I looked a certain way. I didn't run around with some granny dress. I was either smart enough or stupid enough to get my first show business dress from the Fredericks catalog. And the Fredericks catalog, you wouldn't know what that is now. But it used to be this thing, you'd see it advertised in the back of movie magazines when I was 12, right? And it was sexy clothes for women. And it was drawn, they weren't photos, they were drawn. So they were really they were really pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ordered this dress and I overdubbed on it. I made it have a ragged hem and like a V hem.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed up in my high heels and there were people around like Judy Collins and others in not very flamboyant clothes. So I was also making that mistake. So here I showed up. I wasn't singing folk songs. I didn't know how to read music. I had never met a lawyer. I mean, I was really green and I was wearing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, looking back on it, all I can say is, be yourself and be who you are. Because I had an awful lot of fun, even though I was doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't soar to the top. I didn't become, the equivalent of Madonna and Michael Jackson. But there were reasons why. And it had nothing to do with lack of talent. But those of us like you and me who are in show business, we know all the things that it takes to make an artist. And it's not all good. And it's very tricky for anyone to negotiate as long as it lasts in that kind of center. I had no idea that there was anybody standing in opposition to me or trying to trip me up. I just thought I was lucky to be there and to get to make one record,
And you were. I mean, the other side of it is you did get to do it.
I did get to do it, and I got to do it for my reasons, not so much for showbiz reasons.
Yeah.
And I didn't find out for 20 years I didn't know that there was any such thing as blacklisting. None of us did.
Yeah.
I had no idea I'd been taken out.
Yeah.
I had to find out by accident.
We'll be back with Rick and Buffy Sainte-Marie after a quick break. Nobody likes restless nights and waking up in the morning to sweaty sheets. Plus, high-quality sleep is imperative to health and performance. So prioritizing your sleep is important. Sleep is when muscles repair, your brain detoxes, and the body works on cellular renewal. We just can't afford to miss out on an adequate amount of high-quality sleep. One of the easiest and most effective ways to get better sleep every single night is through temperature regulation. Studies actually prove cooler temperatures lead to deeper, more restful sleep, and that insomniacs lack a natural drop in body core temperature, which keeps them up at night. By building healthy sleep patterns through temperature-controlled sleep, you will feel every part of your life improve. This is why I choose Chili Sleep products. Chili makes both the Chili Pad and Ooler, two really cool products that fit over the top of your mattresses and use water to control the temperature of your bed. Since water is more thermally efficient than air, Chili sleep systems can help lower your internal temperature to trigger deep, relaxing sleep. The Ooler is controlled through an app on your phone with smart scheduling, a warm awake feature, and a UV light to auto clean, while the Chili Pad is simply controlled using a remote. Chili sleep systems will help you fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, and wake up feeling fully rested. Whether you like to sleep warmer or cooler, you can customize the temperature for you and your side of the bed. Right now, Chili is offering the Broken Record audience a really great deal. When you go to chilitechnology.com/record, you can get 20% off any sleep system with code RECORD. That's CHILI technology.com/broken record. With the code RECORD, RECORD, for 20% off any sleep system. We all know this school year will be unlike any other, whether your kids are actually going back to school or logging into a classroom from home. And as parents, it can be time-consuming to give your kids the extra help they may need to get through this school year. Well, here's a bit of help. Hands-on science and arts projects you can get delivered to your door with KiwiCo. My kids got their first Kiwi crate in March, right as lockdown started, and it was a lifesaver. For the 2-year-old, we had colorful blocks that taught her about shapes and colors. And for her 4-year-old older sister, we got to build a wind-powered car to teach her all about wind and its effects on the natural world. And not only did she learn, but it was a fun family bonding experience. And your child can also get super cool hands-on science, art, and geography projects delivered to your door every month. You'll be surprised at how high quality the materials are too. As a parent, it can be hard to find creative and new things to keep your children busy and challenged, especially now. KiwiCo is redefining learning with hands-on projects that build confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills. There's something for every kid or kid at heart at KiwiCo. Get 30% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line at kiwico.com/brokenrecord. That's KIWICO.com/brokenrecord. We're back with Buffy Sainte-Marie, who's explaining why her music was blacklisted by the U.S. government in the 60s.
Do you think the song Universal Soldier is the reason?
That's what most people say. That's what Wikipedia will say. They'll say Buffy Sainte-Marie was blacklisted by 2 American presidents because they objected to her outspoken stance expressed in Universal Soldier. But I don't think it was that. It wasn't that.
That's what's so fascinating about that song is there are lots of anti-war songs. There are none from that perspective.
Yeah.
That's a wild perspective.
Have you heard The War Racket?
Mm-mm.
Well, you got to hear The War Racket.
Okay.
I mean, you probably, most Americans, even people in the business like yourself, lost track of me probably in 1970 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if they already had children, they may have seen me on Sesame Street for 5.5 years. They may have. But most people think that I kind of came and went. And that's what I thought. I thought singers come and singers go. But I still had a big career in other places.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, the U.S., something else came along.
So you think the popularity in Canada versus U.S. had to do with blacklisting specifically?
Oh, absolutely.
So interesting.
Absolutely. I was in Canada. I was in Toronto one day. Now, this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
I was in Toronto. I showed up for an interview in a radio station, and the guy said, I'm going to start this interview with Buffy Sainte-Marie by apologizing to you for having gone along with what I was praised to have gone along with on White House stationery. The guy had a letter from the Johnson White House commending him for having suppressed my music, which deserved to be suppressed. And the only person I knew I could talk it over with, besides my lawyer, which I mentioned it to him one day, and he suggested I get my FBI files. And I said, oh, come on. I've never broken the law. I'm not even the one who parades down the street with a sign, I'm not that kind of protester. I'm a writer, right? Yeah. And the only other person I could tell besides my lawyer was my friend Taj Mahal. And Taj and I were classmates together at the University of Massachusetts. And then we both moved to Hawaii, and I had already been here for a long time. And our sons wound up best friends, and our sons wound up being college roommates at Berklee College of Music.
Incredible.
I know. So anyway, we were real good friends. And Taj pointed out to me that Eartha Kitt, too, had been blacklisted. And he knew some other people who he thought had. So my lawyer said, well, let's get your FBI files. I said, oh, there aren't any. There were like 31 pages, I think.
Wow.
It's all redacted. I mean, they were following me around and making sure that I wasn't something that I...
Rabble-rousing. Wow.
Yeah, no, but I wasn't much of a rabble-rouser. I was a writer. That's who I'm a writer and a philosopher. I'm not a card-carrying fist pumper. I'm just not. I support people who do that.
Do you remember the original inspiration for Universal Soldier? Again, just because the perspective is up. Tell me the story.
I absolutely remember it. Let me just set it for you. Okay, I'm in Greenwich Village. There's students all over the streets, right? It's about music, and it's about the fact that we kind of don't trust Mr. Man anymore. It's like we're coming out of the Eisenhower generation. It's Kennedy time. Anyway, I was in an airport. I was in San Francisco airport coming from Mexico on the way to Toronto. I had a concert at the Purple Onion. And in the middle of the night, some medics came in. They were wheeling wounded soldiers in gurneys and wheelchairs and things. And I got to talking to one of the medics, and, I asked him, he assured me that there was a war going on in Vietnam, and it was horrible. And I just got to thinking, well, who is it who's responsible for war? Is it these guys? Is it these poor guys lying here? Some private, he signed up to make the world a better place, or family tradition, or see the world. And now he's lying here half dead, right? Well, there's a certain amount of responsibility right then, but the night's going on, the flight's going to leave in the morning, I got nothing to do, I got a long flight ahead of me, and I'm just thinking about this. Yeah. So The song really is about individual responsibility for the world we're living in. You know, that's the way I put it. And it's about alternative conflict resolution. They're all part of the same thing. Okay, so nobody knew I wrote it. Everybody thought Donovan wrote it. So that wasn't the problem. However, a little bit later, I had written this other song.
Was it a big hit for Donovan?
It was a hit for Donovan, yeah. I couldn't tell you how many they sold or where
But
it
all over
went
the
on the
world,
charts.
or
I think so, yeah. I think it was, yeah. But see, I told you I had never met a businessman. And I had been in town, I had been in Greenwich Village, I don't know, not very long. And I was singing Universal Soldier. I had been singing it in Europe as well. That's where Donovan heard it. But I was singing it at the Gaslight Cafe. Did you ever see that place?
Mm-mm.
Oh, downstairs place, real famous place for newbies to sing past the Hat Club. And the Highwomen came in and they heard it. And the Highwomen were like a preppy group, like the Kingston Trio, right? Kind of, imagine, 4 preppy guys singing a lot of folk songs. And they heard Universal Soldier and they were coming off this huge hit. Michael Roll, the boat ashore, hallelujah, right? Oh, it was like number 1. They were coming off this hit and they wanted to record Universal Soldier. And they said, who's the publisher? And I said, what's that? And a guy at another table, who was a friend of my manager at the time, said, oh, I can help you with that, right? And he made up a contract at the table. I signed it. He gave me $1 and he owned the rights to Universal Soldier. And Donovan got a hit and he got credit for having written it. So you'll find out as you get to know me better. I like to turn things positive. The positive about this story is that 10 years later, I was able to buy back the rights, at least part of the rights to Universal Soldier for $25,000, which was a lot of money at that time. So I was doing that well to rescue my own song.
Yeah.
And at the same time, see, I had written this song called Until It's Time for You to Go. You're not a dream, you're not an angel, you're a man, right? Like played at a million weddings, yeah.
Yes.
And everybody was recording it.
70s?
I had written it in the 60s.
You wrote it in the 60s. Did you ever record it in the 60s?
63 or 64, sure. No.
Really?
No, maybe 64, 65. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it
I
on
did.
one of your early?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think it's on my second album, I think.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. But okay, so I've written this song. Oh God, Bobby Darin recorded it. Now he recorded it in a way.
The first person to cover it? Bobby Darin?
Bobby Darin was the first person to cover it. Yeah. Can I use this guitar here?
Sure.
Do we have time for me to
Please.
show you
Yeah.
something?
Oh, please.
Okay, so the way I had written it. You go da 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 da. You're a man. I'm not a queen. I'm a woman. I'm not a queen. I'm a woman. Take my hand. We'll make a space in the lives that we planned, and here we'll stay until it's time for you to go. See how it goes? And here we'll stay until it's time for you to go. Well, it holds what's called a suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't know what that is, but it's a da 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 da. Hear this note in here again? Well, Bobby Darin and his musical director, they didn't catch that. And they recorded it really vanilla then. And here it's time for the dawn, dawn, ba, ba, ba. So it sounds like every other song, right? And it bothered me. Oh, it just pissed me off for years. And then many other people who recorded it, like Sonny and Cher recorded it, Roberta Flack recorded it, Chet Atkins recorded it.
How was the Roberta version?
Oh, it's beautiful, really
And
beautiful.
is it piano?
Yeah, she does it on piano, and she gets the chords right.
Wow.
I mean, the real musicians got the chords right, but whoever followed Bobby Darin's Vegas version did not. And if Elvis Presley recorded it, Barbra Streisand recorded it, Boston Pops Orchestra, everybody recorded it right.
What's your favorite version?
Oh gosh, I love what Chet Atkins did. Glenn Campbell did a beautiful version. Yeah, and it's been done in other languages too. But anyway, what I was trying to say is that this song kind of brought me to television, and they wouldn't let me on television with Universal Soldier, right? So I think, but once I got on television, I opened my mouth, and I was talking about Native American rights. Alternative conflict resolution. I mean, that's not who they hired. They wanted a chick in a short skirt to come on and sing the song and talk about how much fun it was to, celebrity chat.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that. Harry Belafonte invited me onto the Tonight Show, and I
Great.
sang Now That the Buffalo's Gone, which is about the breaking of the oldest treaty in congressional archives, which had been done in the administration of George Washington, right? Benjamin Franklin and those people, right? They unilaterally broke the oldest treaty in congressional archives, and Now That the Buffalo's Gone tells that story. And it was on my first album along with Universal Soldier. So I did that song with Harry Belafonte when he filled in for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. And the next time that I was invited to come on The Tonight Show to actually be with Johnny, I was told in no uncertain terms that, it was to sing
Just sing your
celebrity,
song.
right? And it's not going to be Universal Soldier. And it's not going to be any kind of song of, asking for change or pointing things out. It wasn't going to be a protest song.
Yeah.
So I turned it down. The screener, I was talking to the screener, one of the producers calls you up and talks it over with you. Yeah, we'd love to have you back on, but times have changed, so you don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear any of that protest stuff. Just sing until it's time for you to go. So I turned it down. So when it comes to your roundabout way to your question about was I blacklisted because of Universal Soldier? No, I was blacklisted because I'm an outspoken person. I was a woman on television pointing out the fact that they were stealing Indian land, the particular parts of Indian land that contained uranium. You don't say that, right?
Wow.
So anyway, J. Edgar Hoover, he was not a fan of mine. Both the Johnson and Nixon governments. I didn't find out about the Nixon blacklisting until, a few years ago on the internet. A guy from the CIA, not the FBI, the CIA, also was talking about COINTELPRO, and me and a few other artists being followed. And really, it was an attempt to shut us up. Now, at a certain point, all of a sudden, I couldn't get any airplay. It didn't matter what we recorded. I was recording in Nashville. We're leaving a whole lot out. I was spending time with Chet Atkins. Chet Atkins fixed me up with Norbert Putnam's area code 615 band. It was just solid, wonderful band. Oh, my God. And we were making really good records. I mean, I want to give you a list because I think probably I've done I think you probably lost track of me significantly enough so that you've probably missed 80% of what I've done that's good. And you've probably heard just a few little things. But I'll fill you in after this.
Great. And we'll put together a playlist based on what you give me, and we'll attach it to this interview.
Oh, that'd be good.
So everyone could hear it.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to people because, you know how it is. You've known a lot of artists with long careers.
Yes.
And things change and you come and go. And, for me, it's always been like, people think that you're so creative when you're out there on the road, right? There's no time to be creative. You barely have a chance to get a nap. You're exhausted all the time. And then you take some time off and they think that you're not creative anymore, which is when, at least in my case, that's when I'm most creative. Yeah. There were also some show business mistakes, I think, that I made, ticking certain people off and just not being I'm not much of a social networker at all. I didn't go to the right parties. But what I've had, I think, has been a different kind of life than the lives of my peers in show business. I never did drink, and I was afraid of men. Because, like I said, in my childhood, there were a lot of pedophiles around. So I was afraid of men, and I didn't go to bars. And that's where all the deals are made. After the show, you go out with the business people, and you make nice, and everybody has a few drinks, and you sit around, and there's wine, and there's blah, 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 and who knows what else. Well, I wasn't there. I don't even know what else, because I wasn't there. And I wasn't there for good reasons. I was by myself. I wasn't a guy, and I wasn't a girl with an entourage around her. I didn't have strong management. I was just a little piece of something. And I knew how you get treated when you show up in the wrong place at the wrong hour. So I think I did really well in negotiating show business on my own terms, to the end where I feel very satisfied as a writer and an artist. And the places that I've been and the people that I've met and the things that I've done. I took 16 years off in the middle of my career to raise my son. And the first 5 of those, we were on Sesame Street. Then when it was time for him to go to school, I said, well, Reagan had cut the budget to the arts for Sesame Street. And we had already been on 5.5 years. And when he did that, it would have meant that we would have had to move to New York or just not be a part of it anymore. Yeah. So I asked my son, who was, I guess, around 5 at the time, I said, do you want to still live in Hawaii or do you want to live in New York? And he said, Hawaii. And that's what I was hoping he would say too.
Good choice.
Yeah, so I took time off.
We'll be back with Rick and Buffy Sainte-Marie after a quick break.
Support for this podcast comes from Qualcomm Incorporated. As the world's leading wireless technology innovator, Qualcomm brought you 3G, 4G, and 5G, inventing many technologies inside the mobile devices you love. Get an inside look at 5G, a technology that can allow nearly everything and everyone to communicate and interact seamlessly on the Qualcomm Podcast. Dig into the inventions and opportunity of 5G and get a behind-the-scenes look at the future of wireless.
I think it's a privilege, a company like Qualcomm, that we work in telecom, we work in communications, and not only through this pandemic, which is a very difficult situation, but through our history, we have seen how much the technology we work on can actually change society and help.
If you love technology, you'll love the Qualcomm Podcast. Listen to the Qualcomm Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or SoundCloud.
Hey there, I'm Ashley Ford, host of the Chronicles of Now podcast. Chronicles of Now commissions amazing authors like Roxane Gay, Colin McCann, Carmen Maria Machado, and Curtis Sittenfeld to write short fiction inspired by the headlines. Each episode features a new work of fiction inspired by the biggest stories of our time, like what does COVID-19 do to our relationships? How do we make sense of climate change and extinction? And perhaps, most mysteriously, what is going on with Trump's tweets? Because in such uncertain times, sometimes art, fiction, is the only way to make sense of it all. The show is great for fans of short speculative fiction, historical novels, podcasts that go behind the news, and narrative shows like Radiolab and The Moth. The Chronicles of Now is imaginative storytelling at its most compelling. Authors helping us understand our world. Subscribe in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Brought to you by Pushkin Industries.
We're back with Buffy Sainte-Marie.
Tell me where a song comes from for you.
I wish I knew. I just don't know.
So you usually start with an idea, or might it start with music?
I might be fooling around with my guitar or my piano or any kind of a drum, anything. I don't know. It just pops into your head. I don't know. I think I write the same way that I did when I was 3, which might be bad news for some people, but it's kind of good news for me, and it's all I got.
Yeah. Well, I think it's only good news because you were playing. So
that's it.
So if you're keeping the childlike play,
that's it.
That's only good.
Thank you. That's exactly it. For me, the music is play.
Yeah, it's not work.
And I know that there's a lot of work.
Yeah,
and like I said, there's show, and you got to show up, and there's business. But that initial thing, the thing that keeps us happening, wanting to be musicians every day, is the fact that it's fun.
What's the story of Little Wheel Spin and Spin? I like that song a lot.
Oh, thank you. It's just talking about our kind of like the human condition all the time. Whether you're talking about the schoolyard or the church or business or politics, there's this idea of act locally, think globally. It's like a gearing. The way that you're making things happen in your family life at home, in your personal life, inside your heart and mind, where things are going on, it really, really does affect the neighborhood, your island or your community, your nation, the world. It really does. So it says things like, Merry Christmas, jingle bells, Christ is born and the devil's in hell. Hearts they shrink, but pockets swell. Everybody know, nobody tell, right? It's like Christmas time, yeah. It says, Blame the angels, blame the fates, blame the Jews or your sister Kate. Teach your children how to hate. And the big wheels turn around and around. Yeah. Oh, the sins of Caesar's men, cry the pious citizens who petty thieve the 5 and 10s. And the big wheels turn around and around. Turn your back on weeds you've hoed, silly sinful seeds you've sowed. Add your straw to the camel's load, honey, pray like hell when your world explode. Little wheels spin and spin, big wheels turn around. And the end says, swing your girl, fiddler say, later on the piper pay, do-si-do, swing and sway, dead will dance on judgment day, little wheels spin and spin, the big wheels turn around and around. So I think some of my songs, they're definitely written by a philosopher. I have two kinds of protest songs and then other songs of empowerment. Mm-hmm. You Got to Run is one of them. Carry It On is another. It's the opposite of a protest song. A protest song will lay out what the problem is. And this other kind of song, for which we don't have a name for the genre, is like the solution.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it works, but nobody's doing it right now. And, you know, I do a lot of interviews, and a lot of interviewers are asking me, well, where are the great protest songs right now? And all I can say is hip hop, rap. It's kind of hard to find, but I think the sentiment, the drive, the creativity is still there among young people and the rest of us. But I don't know what is happening with, Paul Simon and Sting and, some of the other people who've made a freaking fortune. A fortune? How can they see these things going down and not respond with just the heart of their talent and brains? I don't know where their songs are. Do you know?
I don't know.
Are you hearing people write that kind of songs anymore?
I hear young artists doing protest songs. They exist. They exist. They're clearly not in the mainstream. And they're not, they don't seem to have the same impact that they once did. And I don't know why that is.
In the 60s, they were making money off protest music, right? Yeah. I mean, I wasn't getting much money out of Universal Soldier, but Donovan's people were. Yeah. And so was the guy who had given me $1.
Who stole the rights
from you. Well,
he
didn't steal them. No,
yes.
He didn't. I was just green. I was just dumb. No, I'm not mad at him for that. Yeah. That was just me.
Yeah. How did you end up meeting Jack Nitzsche?
Jack Nitzsche.
You were married, yes?
Okay.
I know very little.
Not then. Okay, I'll tell you. Okay. So I told you I was a philosophy major, which you can dig because you were a philosophy major too. Okay. So one of the people I came across, of course, was Friedrich Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche, unfortunately, was totally misportrayed by the Nazis who just misconstrued a lot. Anyway, he was a great philosopher, and I really thought he was terrific. So I'm already recording for Vanguard. I don't know how many albums I've made for them, but Jack Nitzsche saw Cashbox magazine. There was a picture of it. He said he fell in love with me, with my picture in Cashbox magazine, and got in touch with, then he heard my records, right? Got in touch with Maynard Solomon and just was begging to make a record with me. And I guess it was, I was already in Nashville working with Chet Atkins, which was a dream come true. Oh, God, it was wonderful. Anyway, Jack, that's how Jack discovered me. And Jack wanted to make an album.
Was Jack already working with Neil? He had already been working with Neil.
He had already been working with Neil Young, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so Jack wanted desperately to make a record with me. And I didn't even know who he was, except that he was the grandson of Friedrich Nietzsche's brother.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's that Nietzsche. Those are the Nietzsches we're talking about. So
I didn't even know that was really his name.
Yes, that's really his name.
I always thought that was his stage name.
No. Oh, no. People will tell you terrible stories. Jack himself would tell you terrible stories about himself. Jack died a few years ago, by the way. So we met, we made this album called She Used to Want to Be a Ballerina. I think it's the worst record either one of us ever made, but some people liked it. But it had a few really nice things on it. So anyway, every now and then Jack would call me up and he'd need something, like he needed me. He was scoring Performance, Donald Campbell's movie. It was Mick Jagger's first acting role, Performance. It's real good, too. I think it's a great movie and great score. I mean, Jack, in case you're In case our listeners don't understand, Jack Nitzsche he's very, very well known for movie composer and totally original, and he doesn't use ghosts to write his music. He was really, really a unique talent, very wonderful talent. God, he wrote beautiful things that most people will never hear. And I was scoring my own movies, but I was also working with Jack from time to time because Jack was all in love, see. And I didn't see him for years and years and years. And then he came back into my life because he said that he was scoring a movie, and it was a real good movie with Richard Gere and Deborah Winger, and he couldn't come up with a main theme. I don't know. I didn't understand that at all. Jack he's just a brilliant composer, but he can't improvise. And I've never understood that. See, I'm a writer too, but I can't read. So there's all kinds of ways to approach music, and they're all good.
Yeah, there's no right way.
There's no right way, and it's a mystery every time.
Mm-hmm.
See, so Jack couldn't come up with a melody, and he came to visit me, brought the director along. I hadn't seen him in a long, long time. And by that time, I was done with Sesame Street. I was raising my son by myself here in Hawaii. And Jack showed up, and I played him da 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 da. Love lift us up where we belong, right? And I played him the whole melody and the bridge and everything. And that became the main theme for An Officer and a Gentleman. And it became the main theme for the song Up Where We Belong, which was my melody, a little thing that Jack wrote, and then words by Will Jennings, genius, Will Jennings, yes. Oh, God, what a writer. But Jack didn't tell the movie director that I had written it. He pretended he had written it. Yeah. So at some point, he had to tell Taylor Hackford that he had not written it. And so this was not a big deal because movie companies would know how to handle that. But it was very weird. I wrote a lot of things that went into Jack's scores, but he would always tell me, "No, don't tell anybody," because, and I didn't care anyway. All it was, little bit here, little bit there, and so eventually we got married.
That's a big jump, though.
It's a terrible jump. Believe me.
So how did that?
It was a leap of stupidity.
How did that happen?
Oh God. I had lost track of Jack, so there was an awful lot that I didn't know.
Yes.
I was raising my son in Hawaii and doing education and concerts in foreign countries, but the U.S. didn't love me anymore.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know about Jack's police record. I didn't know about anything. And he came along, and he was so nice to my little boy and carried him around in his shoulders, and wouldn't it be wonderful, and blah, blah, blah. And I've been out shopping for the ring, and is what he told me. Anyway, I just said yes. I liked him. We had been friends. We were musical.
You knew him a long time at this point.
Well, yeah, I had known him for a long length of time, but there were many years where there was no calendar at all. I didn't see him for years.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had known in the 60s when I knew him, he's kind of cuckoo. But he was on best behavior when he came back into my life. Mm-hmm. And we were married for just a short time when I realized I was in deep trouble. Oh. And, I say this in all candor.
No, but did he have a drug problem? I don't know much at all.
Oh, well. There's a filmmaker named Christian St. Clair, I believe his name is, who's making a movie about Jack.
Great.
And he asked me to speak out because I don't talk about Jack. Mm-hmm. And I said, only if Jack's son, Jack Jr., is part of this, which he was.
Great.
So I saw a little bit of what Keith Richards did, because he and Keith were very good friends, and what Jack and Willie DeVille had done together, lots and lots of clips. And I did my piece too, but I don't think it's come out yet. And I really don't feel comfortable in describing Jack in any way, except to tell you that he was super brilliant. I mean, genius, brilliant. He was a very unique intelligence. He was brutal. He would tell you that everybody in Hollywood thinks he's an asshole and that he was right. He would do terrible, terrible things because of he had a mental problem exacerbated, like, an awful lot of people, exacerbated by alcohol. So he was an alcoholic, and drugs, exacerbated. But his real problem was a mental problem. Friedrich Nietzsche died in a mental institution. So did his father, the father of Friedrich Nietzsche. And, so it's something that runs in the family. And all I can tell you is, in defense of Jack, who was no day at the beach, and the first to admit it, was that, he would get a squirt of brain chemicals that was just horror, and he'd lay it on whoever was there. And most of the time that was me. So I hung in there for about 8 years, and finally—
It's a long time.
Finally, I had to— I'll spare you the details, but they were pretty dramatic. Andrea Warner's book, she wrote a biography of me. She just called it Buffy Sainte-Marie, the autobiography. And she goes into some of the details. But musicians sometimes, I guess the reason why I'm willing to talk about it a little bit is to share with you, Jack's probably going to go down in history, unless you talk to Keith Richards, as being a real jerk. And why would I put up with that for so long?
Neil Young also loved Jack.
Yeah.
Loved
Leslie
him.
Morris too just loves Jack. A few people Jack has a few people, and I'm one of them, who even though he was crazy, and we know he was crazy, and we know he was an asshole, and would agree with all of that.
But
He's the most honest person I ever met. Too. Totally honest.
Sometimes the brilliance comes with other things. It's like,
I don't know.
I do.
I think sometimes it does, but I don't necessarily think it has to, and I don't think it's an excuse for it either.
It doesn't have to, and it's not an excuse,
Mhm.
but it's true that they come together sometimes.
Yes,
It's like the same, that break from reality allows innovation.
I think you're right. And even less severe breaks with reality. Like me wanting to live in Hawaii. I live in the mountains over here. Not because I'm Barbie wants to go to the beach. No, it's not that. I live here because it's an aberration for a person in show business to hide away in a place nobody can find you. It's an aberration, but it's my aberration.
Yeah. It sounds really healthy to me.
It is.
Sounds natural and healthy.
And it has been for me. So it's always a balance, because people in the US don't understand that I have a big career. They don't know, because they think that, oh, that was the little Indian girl that would make you cry, or to address that further, people would just think the little Indian girl is mistaken, because I wrote a song called My Country, 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying, which is Indian 101 in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's heavy.
Yeah.
But I tried, when I put this album together, it's a retrospective of all the strong songs, whether they're strongly positive or protest.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one of them that's pap, it's all pretty strong stuff. And when you look back on it, how are you going to do that? My Country, 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying, Universal Soldier, Now the Buffalo's Gone. I did them exactly the way that I did then.
Originally.
Only I'm a better guitar player and a better singer, and we have better recording now. My latest album is Medicine Songs. But the one before that, Power in the Blood, is what I would advise first-time listeners to hear. I think they'd like that album. It's very diverse, has a lot of different kinds of music in it.
Great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Buffy Sainte-Marie for sharing her story and inspiration with Rick. Be sure to check out the playlist Buffy created for us at brokenrecordpodcast.com. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/brokenrecordpodcast, where we'll be putting up our old interviews and also new ones, sometimes with some extra content. Broken Record is produced with help from Jason Gambrell, Mia LaBelle, Leah Rose, and Martine Gonzalez for Pushkin Industries. Our theme music's by Kenny Beats. I'm Justin Richmond. Thanks for listening.